can I go ahead? Or
Welcome to. Dominic.
Recording in progress.
You good? Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm calling to order the July 17th Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee. Thanks to everybody for coming today, either in person or virtually. First thing that we'll do is we'll open it up to public comment. Is anybody here for public comment? Okay. I know some people are here to talk about various things when we get to them. So let's see, any changes to the agenda that anybody has? All right, moving right along. The next, we're going to go to minutes approval. This is for the June 22nd meeting. Would someone like to move the minutes from that date? Moved by Veronica, seconded by Randy. Any corrections, discussions? Okay. Oh, I forgot to say Greg will be a couple minutes late. So all those in favor? Okay, that passes unanimously. And the chair's report. Trying to see if we do have Katie on here. I just wanted to mention that hoping to talk sometime about possibly the Natural Infrastructure Grant Program to look at some revisions for 2024, because we had talked before about not just having environmentally sensitive areas, but also areas for recreation to go through this program. So maybe we can look at that next year as part of the goals for this group and the planning department. And just wanted to mention I attended a Black Power presentation through the Environmental Management Committee, and learned a lot of different stuff. They recorded that if people want to know. We have a lot on our agenda, so I won't go into detail, but they just wanted to say they were hired, or they won the contract through the city of Ithaca to electrify 6,000 buildings in the city by 2030. So a very ambitious program, and a great company. You can look them up online. So expect to hear a lot more from them, because of course the city has a lot of the majority of the buildings in the county. So that's exciting that they're working on that. And next we're going to go right to the Department of Planning and Sustainability. There's Katie. Hi, Katie. Do you have a report for us?
I do. I've got a few things to share with you this morning. The first one is Kathy Wicke has joined our department as Principal Account Clerk Typist. Jennifer Liu in our department moved over to support the Transportation Division, and Frank Doldo. So we now have two Principal Account Clerk Typists, which is great for all the grants that we administer. It's nice to have two brains to help keep things flowing with the finance department. The other thing I wanted to let you know is we are busy working on two grant submittals for the consolidated funding application round that's due at the end of July. The first one is through the Department of Environmental Conservation's Non-Agricultural Non-Point Source Planning Grant, NPG, for $75,000 to do a comprehensive stream corridor assessment study of 6 Mile Creek. This is going to be building off of the City of Ithaca's adopted 2022 drinking water source protection plan, and we'll focus on segments of 6 Mile Creek known to have erosion issues and assess opportunities for stormwater storage that would help to reduce flood risk downstream. The study will focus on an outline specified by the DEC to set the stage for future eligibility for implementation funds. So we're excited about that. Partnering with the City of Ithaca and Soil and Water Conservation District on coming up with the scope of that work. The second one we're applying for is to revamp the ithacatrails.org site, which, you know, is already functional. We're maintaining it, but there's a lot of opportunity to bring it into the new era and make it more accessible for smartphone use, for making it so our trail stewards, like state parks, could real-time update the site so that it's always the most accurate information available, and just overall improving the site accessibility to encourage people to get out on the trails and parks and enjoy our outdoor areas. We're asking for $60,000 from Empire State Development through its Market New York grant program. So fingers crossed on both those grant opportunities. The other one is to let you know that we have been working through NYSERDA's Clean Energy Communities program, and over the course of the year, we've been hosting trainings. We've hosted 5 trainings covering topics from model solar energy law, model battery storage law, solar PV permitting and inspecting, battery energy storage for first responders, and how to incorporate clean energy into a comprehensive plan. All of those have been pretty well attended, but we did hear from the code enforcement officers in the county that they were interested in a specific heat pump training that would be similar in nature. That wasn't offered through the Clean Energy Communities program, so we worked directly with NYSERDA to develop something like that. The exciting part was that we had 45 registrants and 35 people actually attended it, primarily code enforcement officers and heat pump installers. That's more than double the interest in all the other programs. The less exciting part was that despite it being the description saying it was about heat pumps and nonconformities with building code, it really focused on ground source heat pumps, which, you know, it's 400 to 1 in terms of, we have many, many more air source heat pumps that go in the county. And it didn't really hit on the building code issues all that much. So it was a little bit disappointing that way. So we are now in the process of soliciting feedback from everyone who either registered or attended to find out what they really need to help them in their work. And we are hoping, depending on the feedback that we hear, to host another training that would address what they really feel they need in that realm of heat pump adoption. And the last thing I wanted to let you know is that, not to be confused with the program I was just talking about, there is also a DEC program called Climate Smart Communities, and the county has been a silver status member for quite a while now, and our certification is set to expire in fall of 2023, and July 7th was the deadline for resubmittal. Haley Delisle in my office has been working hard on that, and we did submit for recertification. It was a collaborative process. It was great with recycling and materials management, human resources, facilities, and leadership of the legislature all working together. In order to maintain the silver status, we have to be awarded 300 points, and our final application, we submitted points for 453 of those points. So we have a little bit of a buffer. If we're not authorized to claim all of those, it's pretty sure that we should hit the silver level. And just as a reminder to everybody, there is no gold or platinum or silver is as high as you go with this program. So that is about it. We will hear from the state on September 8th whether, you know, what level we achieve in that program.
Great. Any questions or comments for Katie? So you guys have been very busy, sounds like.
Lots going on, yeah.
Thank you. I wanted to, I don't know if you heard my comment before about the natural infrastructure.
Yes, I did hear that. I will add it to our work program for 2024.
Okay, great. And I noted on tomorrow night's legislature agenda with the natural infrastructure grants, if you can just keep an eye out as you usually do, if that gets pulled, if people have questions, if you guys could be available for that.
Yep, for sure, will do.
But it's on consent right now. Okay, anything else, Randy?
Hi, Katie. On the natural infrastructure grant program, the Food Policy Council has been looking at how to identify and protect some farmland so it stays farmland forever. And one of the issues that's come up is that how do you can get conservation easement funds and you may get some state grant funds, but there's a lapse of time before you can get those funds if you apply for those grants. Could this program be used if the agricultural land was identified as strategically important to loan money in the interim till those grants came through, or what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, right now it's written so that it's either a fee simple acquisition or a conservation easement, and you have to have a willing partner to enforce or hold those lands. I will say also the purpose of the Natural Infrastructure Fund, it has always been for kind of the green infrastructure, that idea of a way to protect for resiliency and protecting in the long run due to climate change, like what would be the impact. So you would protect forests in the upland area so that it would reduce runoff and speed of runoff going down to reduce flooding, for example. That was kind of the intention from the beginning for that program. I will say the recreation aspect got kind of put in as a secondary type of thing. So if we would expand it now to be agricultural lands, not necessarily thinking about prime protect or priority areas, that's a different program. We'd need to kind of rethink the whole thing, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Katie? All right. Thank you very much, Katie.
Great. Thanks.
And next up is Darby Kiley with an update on the Municipal Parks and Trails Grant Program in your package, in your agenda package. That's page 18. Hi, Darby.
Thanks, Annie. Hello. Yeah, package page 18. And this is an update from when we talked last about this program in May. And so at that time, I asked for guidance of what to do with the remaining $10,000 that we had in the program, because we had originally 8 applications. And so we reopened the program and then received 3 more applications. And I will note in the City of Ithaca, in the 3rd column of that table, both numbers should be 3578. Sorry for a little number inversion there. And so what we received this $3,578 request from the City of Ithaca. The Town of Ithaca asked for $2,100, but they did have $200 in there for an outreach event, which we do not fund through this program. So we took that off of their total. And then because both the Town of Ithaca and City of Ithaca have not received funding in the past, we prioritized their funding applications. And so that left a total of $4,592, and that was awarded to the Town of Ulysses out of their total of 5,000 requested. So then those projects are in the City of Ithaca, a water bottle filling station, one that has a water bottle, the pet filler, the bi-level drinking fountain, which if you've ever tried to fill up a water bottle in the Cass Park, it's kind of difficult. It's a weird flow problem there. And for the Town of Ithaca, they own the East Ithaca Nature Preserve, and so they are going to be replanting an area that's been damaged by the ash trees dying from the ash borer So they will be purchasing materials for the planting, and they will be holding an event as part of that with the volunteers to do the planting. And then the Ulysses project is for some more upgrades at the Jacksonville Community Park. They want to build a ADA accessible parking area with a path to the restroom, and that will then include some bathroom fixtures that are meet accessibility requirements. So those projects all fit really well within the program criteria and how we look at the evaluation. So we're just have been moving forward. Katie has approved those, and we are working on the contracts with those 3 entities right now. So we have used up the total funding allocated to this program for 2023. Any questions?
Thank you for the update and the detailed memo that explained both rounds. And I just wanted to mention, for full disclosure, I am on the board of the Jacksonville Community Park. But personally, I don't receive any financial benefit. If folks are uncomfortable with me voting for that, you can.
You're not voting for anything. This is just informational.
Oh, that's true. We're not voting today. Oh, right, because it's under the, never mind. It's under the amount that we need to vote for. Great.
Right.
Any questions, comments for Darby? Veronica?
I guess just a comment. Thank you for doing this. Remembering the discussion of what to do with the funds, it feels like this is a extremely good, complete use of it. And I'm excited to use the water bottle filling station in the future.
Yeah, I've ridden my bike down there, and there's no place in that whole area to fill up your water bottle. Anything else? All right, thank you very much, Darby.
Thanks.
Okay, next up, the green, this is through the Department of Recycling and Materials Management. We have the Green Purchasing Communities update.
Good morning, thank you.
Good morning, Kat.
I wanted to thank you for your time and the review of the policy updates to move forward with New York State.
Can you move the microphone?
OGSs, is this better? Okay, great. Thank you. So I wanted to thank you all for your review of the policy and updates for the the procurement policy to move forward with New York State OGS's Green Purchasing Communities program, and to share the update that Tompkins County is now participating in this program. So this will support our environmentally preferable procurement aims and contributes to points in the Climate Smart Communities program that Katie had referenced earlier in her update as well. So as a reminder, this program and participation in it means that the county is committed to using the Green New York purchasing specifications to the maximum extent possible where practicable. And those specifications identify the product criteria, really help reduce or eliminate health and environmental risks from the use of these toxic substance, use or release of toxic substance, minimize the risk in discharge of pollutants to the environment, minimize the volume of and toxicity of packaging, maximize the use of recycled content and sustainably managed renewable resources, and provide environmental and health benefits. And these specifications encompass categories such as construction materials, electronics and appliances, food services, model packaging language, office and building operations, and transportation. So moving forward, we'll be developing resources to support these changes and roll that out across departments, including information about how to incorporate these into purchasing decisions and who to contact. And with these resources, we'll start notifying folks in the county to be able to help support them as they move forward in incorporating these into their purchasing process. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Any questions from the committee? And so I had one, I think I know the answer, but just, so resources for the departments to make the decisions. So it's procurement, like where, like how, like if you're buying, say, a computer or paper towels or whatever, but to try and get the greenest product?
Yes,
right?
exactly. And so like a good example is we recently were redoing a bid for all the recycling bins that our office buys. And I was able to go onto the Green New York website. They have a specification that kind of says, okay, you should be able to find a minimum of this much recycled, post-consumer recycled content in your products. And so we incorporated that kind of language into the bid specs that we were developing for purchase. So it was really helpful to know that there was enough critical mass out there that these are products that the state is, recommending as far as the specifications go.
I imagine that's really helpful that the state has been doing this versus just the county trying to do it on their own.
It leverages a lot more resources, and I think the long-term goal is to be able to kind of make these products more available and kind of help, create that critical mass for buying a lot of these products.
Great, Randy?
Thank you. Does it include vehicles as well, or is that a separate policy?
I don't think the criteria included vehicles, but Terry, who I know does the green fleet kind of activities, is involved with this, with the EPP team, and would be aware of any of those updates, I would imagine.
Yeah, Deborah Dawson just sent an email out, if anybody saw that or not, about the advantages of hybrid vehicles over all-electric vehicles. It was really quite interesting how much energy it takes and how much raw materials, and necessarily not great raw materials, for an all-electric vehicle, and the return on investment on a hybrid is much greater. So I just thought that was an interesting article. So.
Okay, anything else on that topic, Kat? Okay, great. And then next for your department, an update on rethinking waste in Tompkins County.
Thanks. So we did hold a public meeting. So this is Rethinking Waste in Tompkins County as the draft local solid waste management plan. We do try to lean towards the rethinking of the materials as opposed to management there. We did hold a public meeting on July 11th and had a great turnout. I want to thank the committee members here who were able to attend. We really appreciate your participation. We had about 40 individuals, or a little over 40 individuals, attend the meeting. As far as the public comment process goes, we're really appreciative of the comments that have been coming in so far. This is a draft plan. The comment period is open through August 7th, and we're really getting some good feedback. We've overturned a few minor data errors in our baseline data. This is the kinds of things that we want to find before the draft plan becomes our final plan. So we really do welcome that input and are working on continual improvement for that draft. Some of the highlights of the feedback that we've received so far, many of you may have seen that there were concerns about land application of biosolids. We did clarify at the meeting. I'll clarify again. This was one of the data errors that we did identify. The data received from the village of Cayuga Heights since 2017 reflects that the material, their biosolids, is not being land applied. So there's no explicit commitment in the plan to increase land application of this material. So we are working to make sure that folks are aware of that. Some other things that kind of have come up in the public comment period, there's been a little bit of comments about concerns about landfill capacity over the 10-year period, as well as some other environmental concerns related. Acknowledgement that stakeholders beyond the county alone need to be engaged to achieve the goals. We do, recognizing kind of the current situation and our general goal for reducing waste as much as possible, we do have very strong efforts outlined in this plan. And so recognizing that community partners need to be involved, be it through public-private partnerships, community engagement, or other collaboration is an important aspect, as well as the importance of education and outreach. So as I mentioned, we held the public meeting, we provided an overview of the plan, heard public feedback. We do have the plan open for public comment through August 7th currently. Following that, we'll develop a responsiveness summary and incorporate any needed edits into the draft. And then we're hoping that's about a month-long process, so that would put us around September for submitting it to the DEC, which can take up to 120 days for review. Once we hear back from the DEC, then we can see what comments need to be incorporated and then bring it back through the county process for moving it forward.
Okay, great. And I know that, so where we send most of, or Casella brings most of our solid waste is to Ontario County. And I heard that they're slated to close in 5 years, is that correct?
I believe so, yes. But yeah, currently the majority goes to Ontario County. We do have a couple secondary landfills that we're able to take material to in the event we need to. As far as that disposal contract, so we contract separately for the hauling and the disposal of landfill material. That's not affiliated with the contract for the Recycling Solid Waste Center, two separate contract. That comes up either for an extension or for bid in May of 2024. So that bid dictates where waste would be going under a new contract if there was a new contract.
Okay. I'll open up to questions from the committee. Okay. Anything else on? Oh, I actually just heard that you'll be presenting at the county legislature meeting, I think, on the 1st. Is that correct?
Yeah, we'll be happy to.
1st of August?
Yeah, we'll be happy to.
Okay. All right, thanks for doing that. We've had some questions. I've been trying to field some of them, but it'd be great to have you there because I know there's a big interest in hearing more about it. Okay, thank you guys very much for coming today. And you're welcome to stay. You know, we have a lot of different things on the agenda about, well, we have the, let's see, the next is the solid waste fee, so I guess you probably want to be here for that. Actually, that's next. Let's see, so next is our county administrator's report, and including a resolution, but I'll let you take it away, Lisa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before we get into the resolution, I just had one update for the committee. HR will be posting the position for Director of Recycling Materials Management, plans to post this week. The posting will be up for a 30-day period with interviews to occur later in August. And I'll be having a conversation with you, Ann, as Chair of Peak, to talk about legislature involvement on the panel. But in the meantime, thank you. Leadership at Recycling Materials Management, Leo, done a great job as interim, and Kat for your leadership as well in getting us through this period. So next, in terms of the resolution before you and the discussion about restructuring of the solid waste annual fee, there's been a lot of work that has been done for the better part of a year to look into this issue, and I wanted to turn it over to Norma Jane to kick it off because she's been directly involved. So, Norma.
We have a couple of our team members here that are on the committee as well, but just to kind of give you an overview, I don't know, did you want to move the resolution first, or do you just want me to speak to it?
I'm thinking to not move the resolution first because I'd like to hear some feedback, because it could be, you know, I want to be totally open because, you know, we got an email from Cornell, and just want to be totally open to see if maybe we want a possibility of postponing it for more feedback. But let's see how that goes first.
And also, before just jumping in one last time, just to acknowledge too that we have partners from Cornell, Ithaca College, and TC3 joining us in person and via Zoom. So,
would you like to come to the table?
We can. We're also happy to consent.
Okay.
So, but if you'd like to sit at the table, we're also happy to.
Just to kind of give a little bit of background, the current solid waste fairness team worked to determine a metric that would equalize the solid waste fee. The last time this was reviewed and established was in 1995. when the Solid Waste Fairness Committee met. And it was to establish those fees between the homeowners, businesses, and the universities and colleges. In 1995, the solid waste fee was divided into two categories. It was to pay for the debt for the old landfills and construction of the recycling center, and then all other services. In the years since the annual fee was implemented, several changes have taken place. There were significant capital costs to close the landfills, as well as construction of the recycling solid waste center and improvements to the facility, the operating costs for the household hazardous waste depot, organics management, and reuse of waste reduction. The debt for the closed landfills has retired within the last 5 years, but the costs remain to manage the closed landfills and many improvement benefits for the property owners of Tompkins County. In 1995, the fee was established, and since then, and with that, there was no mechanism built in to address the industry changes for the universities and colleges, unlike it is for the residents and the commercial properties. Commercial and residential properties are based on number of units for each resident, and the commercial properties are charged a fee based on the square footage of those properties. There was not really a written metric for the colleges and universities, and Leo, you can correct anything that I'm saying that doesn't fit. The current fee distribution between the residential, the commercial, and colleges has not kept pace with the services that are being provided by the Recycling Solid Waste Management Center. While residential and commercial property fees increase, the college and university fees have not. Residential units are billed based on the assessment record, as I've said, and both variables are provided to us by the assessment office. We do not have data collected on the universities or colleges, so making any kind of changes based on that information, mainly because they're non-taxed. We don't have the ability to make changes based on that. Hopefully that kind of gives a little bit of background. So at this point, the metrics are being, the team was trying to set a metric. It's not we're not exactly sure how it will come out, and I do think that there's probably further discussion that needs to be had about how that is distributed, but that's what we've been working toward.
Okay, at this time, we're a little ahead on schedule, so we do have some time. I'd like to open it up to the members of the committee. We have some representatives, I see from Ithaca College and Cornell here, and let's see, TC3. So if anybody wants to ask us any questions or comments at this time, I just want to open it up. And so anybody like to say anything? Randy? And then Amy Kremenick will do next.
Oh, great. Greg and I were part of this committee as well, and we met, I think, 7 times over the last 7 or 8 months, something like that, and got a lot of data and research. And what became evident to me was that residential fees had climbed, I think, 60% in the last 12 years, something like that, whereas the fees for other people went down as a percentage, and other entities. And so we tried to look at that, and we didn't really understand why, and part of what we learned was because of the closing of the landfills, because that was in the original formula, I guess, and how colleges were paying, and then that when that cost of closing dropped off, then their fee dropped as well. And as we looked at it, we wanted to understand how the fee and the overall business could improve, and how we could reduce waste, and how we could recycle more, reuse more, and all those kinds of things. And also, what we found, and this has been reported in other meetings, is that the infrastructure improvements that have been done at the center have diminished the fund balances, or and almost to the point where it would be diminished completely, and we needed to also reinstate some of those reserves. We just did a big pavement job there, replaced one of the scales, and that really drained all the funds from that. And so we wanted to be fair about it, and we looked at the colleges as one example, and they had definitely seen their percentage of sharing this cost diminish while everybody else's prices went up. And so we wanted to be fair about it. We talked about square footage, and we realized pretty quickly that that it was pretty hard to understand square footage in the colleges. Because they're growing and they change, and we didn't think it would be a good idea to kind of put that burden on the colleges of how many square feet you have, and all those kinds of things. And so we thought the fairest way, after speaking to attorneys and how the process works and what legally can be done, that it would be based on the number of students. We didn't really talk about whether it was FTEs or if it was just total number of students. I'm not sure we have clarity on that. But I think the process we came up with was fair, and I'm looking forward to moving ahead with it.
Thanks, Randy. And Dr. Kremenek?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am aware of the interest in the change to the recycling materials management fee, and I do want to say that TC3 is committed to sustainability and to recycling. It's critically important to our environment, to the health of the planet, and that's something that we take very seriously at the college. We're also committed to paying our fair share of the fees and recognize the importance of making a change. That being said, we are concerned about the assessment based on total enrollment, and that recognition, and ask for recognition of TC3 as different from our four-year counterparts, in that we are largely a commuter institution. We currently have a total enrollment of what we call our core students, full and part-time, of about 1,600 students. And as we look at the potential to assess us based on over 4,000 students, I believe that many of those that are counted in that number include students that are served in our concurrent enrollment high school program, which I believe everyone is aware is fairly sizable. But those students do not set foot on the TC3 campus. They are taught by credentialed high school instructors and earning college credit, but are not coming to TC3. And so what we are asking is for some consideration of Tompkins Portland and our enrollment picture being a little bit different from that of other institutions, and that perhaps there could be an opportunity to think about a full-time equivalent basis, which was suggested, or perhaps another way of counting students so that this can be fairly assessed amongst the institutions. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments and your input, Dr. Kremenek. And next we have Scott Doyle from Ithaca College.
I'm sorry, could I just ask a clarifying question, Dr. Kremenek? Hi, Amy. Thanks for joining. It's Greg Mezey. Just a quick question. The 16,000 students, or sorry, 1,600 students that you mentioned as full and part-time, you gave that number a term you used. I'm just trying to make sure I heard and understand what you define it as those 1,600 students.
That's what I refer to as, or what we refer to as our core enrollment, meaning students who come to campus for classes, meaning they come step foot on the TC3 proper. The balance of students, actually let me just say this, so of that, about 40% of those students are part-time. So they are not all full-time students. We serve a sizable portion of part-time students, predominantly adults, who are likely already living in Tompkins or Cortland County. The balance of students would be students who are enrolled in our College Now program or our concurrent enrollment program, meaning that they are based in high schools. whether it's here in our 2 counties or in other counties throughout the state.
And that's how you would add the other 2,400 or so students to get to the 4,000-ish number of students?
Yes, TC3 has the largest concurrent enrollment program in the state of New York.
As one of the members who sat on this committee, that sort of detail and information is really helpful, so I appreciate you taking the time and sharing that, because I think that provides some clarity and some insight into how the enrollment number within TC3 is structured, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Scott, good to see you.
Good to see you too. Yeah, I appreciate it. Scott Doyle, I'm the Director of Energy Management and Sustainability at IC. My colleagues asked me to attend today, and of course I wouldn't pass up an opportunity to reconnect with the good folks at PDEC. So thanks again. I've been in this role for a year after 15 years in county planning and sustainability, and certainly in the 15 years too, I learned a great deal from Leo and Barb and the great work they do. And I totally understand the fact that you need to increase rates to cover costs. That makes sense to me. I don't have any formal statement to add. I just would say that timing-wise, I think this is a little difficult as a guy who tracks a lot of the different utility costs for us over the years. I mean, this is the start of our fiscal year is July 1. Effectively, this rate change is over 100% increase in that fee that we're used to paying. So that's a shift that we need to strategize. And I think it is an interesting piece from going from a kind of per tonnage percentage that hasn't changed every year to a pretty dramatic shift is, it's difficult for planning when we're particularly tracking margins pretty closely. And, I understand the cleanliness of maybe going for a per student rate, but it's just so different. And I'm not sure it makes a lot of sense for a student group. I think a group of students is maybe different than a group of residents in terms of how they, participate in various waste and recycling, particularly because we invest in a lot of other things to help with education, other things on campus too. But that's just my perspective there from my solid 1 year in this position. So I think that they'll probably have some more formal follow-up too, but I appreciate the work that you're all doing and thinking through this. I understand it. I think it's a difficult leap for us to kind of plan for. Certainly, I think would be a little smoother if it was a titration over time for sure, but I understand it. And I also am going to absolutely call on continued work with the county as we move forward to improve what we're doing up here. So certainly we're going to need your help more in improving what we can do on and off campus too. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Scott. Any questions or comments for Scott? Anybody else like to have any comments at this time or questions for us? Greg?
I don't know who would be best to maybe provide some context, maybe Norma, about how some of the other units or properties get assessed the fee, to sort of have that context as well. How many, like when we look at multifamily, we assess it based on, or Leo, I'm not sure, but if somebody could maybe give that context, because I hear Scott's concern about being a smoother transition over time and things like that, but at some point, with all things that we assess in the county, we have to get to a market rate. And sometimes we have to get to that market rate faster than we like to. I mean, I think if you asked every single property owner in Tompkins County if they wanted a smoother, more gradual transition to the reaction of the market over the last several years, they would have also taken that opportunity to express that they would have liked that as well. But unfortunately, sometimes we have to catch up because we did have a flawed and really sort of out of touch with the condition way to calculate, which was sort of just a leftover of the past. So Scott, I hear you, but sometimes I think we need to just move forward and recognizing the challenges that our educational partners face. I also think these are challenges that every member of our community is facing, and to be really equitable, I don't see why we should give greater pause or greater delay to our academic partners if we can't do the same for members within our community.
Okay, Veronica and then Norma.
I just wanted to append to Greg's question. As you give the context, can you also share where we can find this information? I've been belatedly looking for what is the fee structure, and I cannot find it on the internet. For colleges and universities specifically, I can find other stuff.
The current structure.
I don't think it's really written anywhere.
Part of the issue is it's not codified.
Yeah, so just to comment on Greg, the three different sectors, the residential sector and the commercial sector versus the college and universities. There's a annual fee of $80, currently $80 per ton. When I came here, 2006, 2007, I think it was $56. So that fee has been easy to increase, simply from 57 to whatever it went to whatever it went to get to $80 a ton. So that's billed per residential unit. And then the commercial businesses, the square footage, there's a formula or calculation that would equal to the $80 per ton fee. So in other words, whatever square footage equals one billing unit of $80, that's how that's calculated. So that standard is there. As far as the college and universities, I'm still trying to understand the formula, but it does take into consideration volumes that are generated by the colleges. It takes into consideration the net costs of recycling. And one of the things that I kind of clarified prior to coming over here was, and this is just another issue that causes some problems, is those costs are based on budgeted numbers. So they're based on our budgeted revenues. They're based on our budgeted expenses, and then the net of that is used in that formula. I can tell you and speak to the last couple of years as to what our actuals turned out, our actual expenses, our actual revenues were not as pretty as what they were budgeted for. So, that alone just makes it that much more difficult to try to understand how to come up with more of a simple standard that we could use. The comments with TC3, it's a commuter college. I believe the group may have touched on it, or I know Norma and I have talked about it a little bit. If we were to look at this unit fee based on enrollment from the college student population, the average residential unit, I believe there is 2.14 persons per home. The colleges, or at least what we were looking at projection-wise, was Cornell and Ithaca College would have been 4 students would equal a billing unit of $80. And TC3, I believe we projected or looked at 6 students per billing unit. So wherever that lands is where it would land. But just so you know, I mean, that's something that could be used to kind of shake out some fairness with calculating it. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense.
Sure. Would you like to come up to the table, or you can go over to the microphone over there to ask a question?
No, I'm also trying to understand the numbers. So I'm just trying to.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. So.
Can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is.
You have to talk into the mic, I'm sorry, for the people in Zoom
Hi,
to
everybody.
hear.
My name is Spring. I work at Cornell with the recycling program up there. So
this is a topic near and dear to my heart, but I'm also trying to understand the numbers, so bear with me. So as a resident, so I'm paying the $80. So at the university, we have dedicated trucks, so we drive the trucks over the scales and we pay $80 a ton specifically for what we take to you. So I just want to make sure I understand, is the fees, these $80 fees, in addition to the tonnages the businesses and the residents are sending, or is this?
Well, there's no I'm not sure the $80 a ton.
Well, you were just talking about the $57 up to the $80, and that you're dividing that out, but our numbers aren't in there because we're paying it specifically because we're sending dedicated trucks.
So the $80 annual fee references what residents are paying and what commercial businesses would pay based on their square foot.
So not including the.
So that's not a fee.
Not including the weight of the material, or then the weight of the material is additional.
So that $80 isn't in the equation at all currently with the colleges. That's what we're proposing. I think what you're referencing is there's a commercial recycling tipping fee at the facility, which is currently $60 a ton.
Okay.
So commercial haulers would pay that at our facility.
Okay. And then they pass.
The colleges would be considered in that commercial recycling category.
Okay, so it's the fee plus, and then the tipping is in addition to, because right now we pay a fee, but then we also pay what we bring. So it's not like we wouldn't have to pay the tipping fee anymore.
Can you explain maybe what residences do? Because
can I ask maybe clarifying question? When you're talking about the $80 a ton, the annual fee, are those tons that are actually measured?
It's not a ton. It's not a ton.
Oh, sorry. Can you say what it is again?
So the $80 annual fee would be what a single-family resident that owns their home would be billed for, $80 annually.
Okay.
Yep.
And that includes the tonnage or the weight of the material that they're sending?
That $80 annual fee has nothing to do with tonnage.
Okay.
And it has nothing to do currently with the colleges.
No, I know, as a resident.
Okay, sorry.
It pays for
Sorry.
my.
Is it intended to cover the
No.
disposal fee for the residential properties?
No, because the residential tax parcel pays the $80 assessed fee.
Right.
To support the recycling and materials management efforts within the county.
So that picks up my recycling, it pays for its processing, it pays for everything.
Then you also have, like I, in Dryden, have a contracted service provider with Casella.
Yeah, but that's for landfill.
And then they take, trash tags and all of those type of things. So that's in addition to that $80 fee.
Right, but the $80 is paying for my pickup and my disposal of my recycling.
The $80 contributes to the cost of a number of programs that the county supplies.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understood that properly.
No, it's a good question.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think there was a misspeak earlier. I think when Leo was talking about $80, it is per unit. So if it's a multi-unit property, every unit gets charged $80, but it's by unit, not by tonnage.
So businesses aren't paying for their recycling?
They're paying by square foot.
Okay. They're not paying. They're not paying when they go over the scales. They just pay by.
Commercial recycling.
They do.
Yeah, the only trucks that come into our facility with recycling, so I'm talking single stream recycling, the traditional recycling, is the residential trucks that pick up curbside that we contract with. Anybody else generating commercial material would pay the tipping fee, $60 a ton.
Okay, thank you.
Our current cost for the recycling, I want to say is like $168 a ton. The cost of it, the expense of it. That's not the net, but that's the expense.
Just so really when we talk about a $20 per student fee, that's just a metric. How that gets distributed, similar to what Leo was talking about with commercial properties and the square footage equaling $80 per unit. I think the big question is, what is a unit, right? So is it 4 students? Is it 6 students? That's I think the piece that still needs to be answered is what equals a unit. And then we can probably move forward, but to have some metric other than, right now, we have no metric, and we have no codified method of determining what those fees should be annually. We don't have data collection for any of the properties, so we can't use it based on a unit fee. So this is really to come up with something that it seemed the most reasonable metric would be to use students, per student. And then determining how many students equals a unit is something that can still be worked on with all of the colleges, I think. We just have to standardize it because it is required by law.
It's in the letter.
You want to come on up? Yep. And just as a comment, before you folks leave that have spoken, if you could just give your full names to Brittany so we can put it in the minutes.
Absolutely. Kate Supron, I'm with Cornell Community Relations, and we've already submitted a response to the county's proposal. And I think what we're looking for is just what the costs are that the county is incurring based on Cornell, because we are running our own waste management streams and programs as well. So what is it about each student that is costing the county when we, so not just like how do you come up with the metric of the fee, but what is the cost that you're trying to cover that you're incurring because of Cornell that is not being covered? Because, certainly we want to pay our fair share because we're totally committed to recycling and to paying our share.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think sorry, I didn't mean to jump.
Go ahead.
Well, if you're responding to this question, go ahead.
So one of the questions is, would Cornell be willing to provide square footage of all the buildings and facilities on campus and number of students housed in each unit? That would be an exercise that Cornell would willingly supply, so that we could potentially even look at assessing all of the buildings and facilities on campus, similar to the way that we assess every other unit and parcel
But I guess what we're asking is, what services are those buildings receiving from the county with regard to waste management?
Sure. So if we can answer that question, would you be willing to do?
I can take that question back. I'm not empowered to make that decision for Cornell.
Yeah.
Randy?
I think when, the bigger picture here, and as Kat went through her presentation, is we have a very aggressive goal for reducing waste in Tompkins County. And it's going to cost money, and it's going to require data. I mean, you can't just say, well, we're going to reduce waste. You have to know exactly where your waste is being generated and how you're reducing that waste. And it's going to cost money, and we're going to have to work closely with the colleges, which on how to what waste streams they're producing or not, in whether it was residential or commercial, which is a whole different animal, whether the product's coming in contaminated, can it be recycled, or is it going right to landfill? And of course, we're talking about closing landfills. We've already supported one resolution for Seneca Meadows that we think it should be closed and it should not be extended. We're here in Ontario, is 5 years away. You can't continue to send this stuff to landfills because it's hard to do because they don't want it either, people who live in those areas. So I just think that, working closely with the colleges is really important. We're doing the residential now. I think we need to work more closely with commercial. There's a lot of large apartment buildings in Ithaca where the recycling is somewhat poor. at best. And we need to get our hands around that, and it's going to cost money to do that. So.
Thanks, Randy. Greg? Oh, I'm sorry.
Let Norma go.
No, it's okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, and so, no, I just wanted to follow up on the question. So one of the things that happened, that started in 1995, was to establish a fair share of the cost of recycling solid waste management. And many people in the county don't take advantage of every single service that's being provided by the county, but they're paying for it. Yeah. All of the commercial properties are paying for it. Everybody's paying for it. And I guess that's, I mean, to say that it's just that it's only the services that we are providing directly to an individual organization isn't really the way this was set up in 95 or the way it was being viewed currently. It's looking at the cost of providing this service to our community and how we're paying for it. So that was my only response.
Just thinking about the next presentation that we're having on a circular economy with buildings, you know, this is all, these are all different pieces, I don't want to say of the pie, but they're all different ways we're trying to take a chunk out of this issue. And so if this helps, I know universities and colleges, the county, we have volunteer organizations in the community, we have departments at the county, we have so many different organizations and looking at how to reduce waste. So if this helps us, and we're talking about landfills, or landfills closing, so if this helps even bump it up higher, you know, to look at this, I think that's a win. And I think looking forward, you know, I would like to, with the committee's permission, I'd like to postpone the resolution and not put it on the table today, because I think we have a lot more discussion and a lot more information. Is that okay with the committee? Postpone the resolution?
I guess for what purpose? That's way too vague for me.
We've had questions asked today. I don't know if this was sent to everybody, but Joe Molina from Cornell, for instance, asked a lot of questions. I would like this, you know, this system this to be transparent, and I'm hearing more information that we're getting today that we didn't know and have input on. So I would like to postpone that to make sure we're doing as transparent a process and keeping a good relationship with our universities, colleges, and to help make this as fair as possible. And for instance, what I heard from Joe Molina at Cornell, that they're just, you know, hearing a lot about this, the information, the proposal about less than 2 weeks ago. And so giving them more time to respond and give input. You want to say something, Lisa? Did you say something?
Well, we have notified, it's probably been a month. I would suggest we could set a follow-up meeting for further discussion with our university partners about the nuances of each campus and how we might approach going about this and bring it back for the committee in next month for consideration. But I would leave it to you. That would be an action item that I would be willing to do.
Before the committee, or before our meeting started, I asked Lisa if this was time sensitive, if we needed to do it today, if there's a certain reason, and not having a time sensitive reason too, I'd like to have things be, you know, have more time for.
I wouldn't say it's not time sensitive, because we are in the middle of budget
season.
Okay.
You know, and looking at our budget estimates for 2024. So,
Randy?
I'm not excited about postponing it, but I'm willing to look at it for a month. And I have a few questions I'd like to see answered as well, and about how the fee is structured for colleges. I have a few questions on that. So,
that you'll take offline or to work on later? Any other comments? Or how do other committee members feel about this?
Point of order, just checking the resolution, it doesn't need to be on the floor to be having this discussion? Okay.
Right, it's about bringing it onto the floor.
I just want to point out, too, that the fees don't come until later. So there's no fee established with this at all. It's just saying that the committee plans to move forward. But there's no fee because the fees come later. The Recycling Solid Waste Management brings a resolution to establish fees that the legislature votes on at another time. I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that.
So what the resolution is saying is that the charge for university colleges and similar institutions reflect a solid waste annual fee based on billing unit according to student enrollment. So all we're doing is setting direction for the department to say, moving forward in our presentation, and all of this feedback from colleges and universities can happen if we move this forward to determine what is the appropriate number of students that we would then codify when we accept the recommendation of the department for the annual salary, for their budget, essentially. Is that a correct assumption, Lisa?
Yes.
So again, I don't see that this is just saying that we're going to look at college and units billing unit based on number of students, just like we look at multifamily properties based on number of units, or commercial properties based on square footage, or single family residential as a tax parcel as a single unit. That's all that this is saying, is this antiquated formula, archaic system of charging them less than what I will say is their fair share, we're putting aside, and we're just providing direction. We're not saying how much the fee is going to be. We're not saying anything like that. We're saying this is just how we're going to look at colleges and universities. And I think Norma's point was dead on. We provide, and services are available. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to do that, because if every taxpayer, if every business marched in here and said, well, I don't pay for this, I don't pay for that, and strike that from the budget, we don't give our regular constituents that opportunity. Why are we doing that for colleges and universities? Doesn't make sense to me. If we want to talk about fair share is a consistent method of application across the board. And just because you don't take advantage of something doesn't mean that you can't take advantage of something or can't utilize something of that service. So I don't necessarily agree with that. And if we want to open up each other's books, I'm more than happy to go down that path. I would just love to see, and it'd be very transparent, what colleges and universities are also spending, what they're providing for themselves, what they're not providing, and go down that path. But I think all that this resolution today is saying is we're going to look at colleges, universities, and similar institutions based on some sort of student enrollment number to determine their billing unit, not what that student number is. That's up for further discussion at budget time.
Because I do have to work on the numbers and budget on my end too. So is the intent here that we're going to be able to start, that the colleges and universities can start utilizing the other programs other than just the single stream recycling?
Well, I mean, there's services available, certainly.
So
yeah, I don't know what particular services you might be talking about. You know, household hazardous waste, for example, it's a residential program. There are limits as far as what we can accept under our permit, volume-based, that would put you in a large quantity generator versus a small quantity generator.
We're definitely a large quantity
generator. You know, something like household hazardous waste, probably not.
Composting, probably not.
Composting, no. There wouldn't be any reason why you couldn't participate or take advantage of that program.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at some point, probably one of the things we should understand is what programs we could use versus not, because right now, I wasn't under the impression we could utilize any of them. So that would be good to understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Randy?
I agree with Greg. We should move this resolution today.
If that's moving of the resolution, I would second that.
Lisa?
I would just say, I think we can probably do both simultaneously. We can continue to have these conversations about implementation.
And this can go to the legislature not on tomorrow's meeting, but on the following meeting. So that would give about a month.
So did you move the resolution?
I moved this resolution.
You moved it, and then Greg seconded it, so it's on the floor. Discussion? Veronica?
I just have a question. I'm sorry if I missed it. Was there any publicly, public written document from the working group about what you did and what you found? I know that legislators received some preliminary, some not to be published yet stuff, but I'm wondering if there's anything to refer to publicly.
No, for right now, what is the summary that's been provided in the agenda packet and the resolution?
Here's more data.
What?
Here's more data.
Okay, yeah, I figured. If no one else has their hand up, I have another.
Go ahead.
So I guess in the resolved, it kind of looks to me like the one resolved is saying two things. One is that that universities and colleges and similar institutions are going to now have their fee based on billing unit without saying what a billing unit is, as opposed to based on, I don't know what, nothing, negotiations.
It's billing unit according to student enrollment.
I know, well, I'm trying to say that's maybe you could separate those out. I'm not saying we should, but some of the responses I'm hearing, or from some of the higher ed reps who've come, is concerns about how you calculate the student enrollment or how the student enrollment matches the solid waste use. And that is one issue. But the thing about the fee being based on billing unit, I guess, is the solid waste annual fee for colleges currently based on some concept of a billing unit?
No.
No.
Okay, so even that in and of itself, regardless of how you calculate the billing unit, would be a change. And that, I think, even that part, I hope we could agree on more affirmatively, that however we do it, the solid waste fee for colleges and universities should be codified somehow and calculable somehow, as opposed to not that.
Yeah, and I think the recommendation of the committee was that it be based on student enrollment. If we look at, student enrollment, for TC3, not as, commuter or high school reciprocal programs, those type of things. I mean, I think that that's something that Leo and Norma in the budget process and recommendation will work through and make the recommendation on. But it was a recommendation of the committee that was based on student enrollment, because there's, faculty and staff that come to the university to support that generate waste and things like that. And it was a consistent number that could be applied across and a logic to use enrolled students. That's, my understanding of the work that we did and the recommendation that we made.
Any other comments before we vote? Okay. All those in favor of the resolution, raise your hand. Okay. All those opposed? That passes. Thank you, everybody. Let's see, the next topic, so we'll have to move on, but I appreciate everybody coming to ask questions and give us more information on this. The next thing we have on our agenda is a presentation from the which is hard for me to say, crowdfunding, I'll let you say it. Circularity, reuse, zero waste development. And I practiced trying to say that word last night. So we have Susan Holland and some other folks. I'll let you introduce your group
Great,
here
thank you.
and go ahead with your presentation. Thank you for coming today, and anybody else is welcome to stay for this also.
Yeah, so Jenny has our slides. Jenny is remote today, Jenny Minner, who is the Associate Professor and the Director of Graduate Studies at the City and Regional Planning, Cornell College of Agriculture, yeah, Architecture and Planning, and she's also the Director of the Just Places Labs, all at Cornell. I'm Susan Holland. I'm the Director at Historic Ithaca and for Significant Elements as well. And I was going to say, speaking of waste diversion, that's what we're going to talk about today, and the circular economy, and appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all today. You've seen us a few times advocating, but also joining me, there's going to be 4 of us. Diane Cohen, who is the CEO of Finger Lakes Reuse, and to my right is Christine O'Malley, who's going to start us off, and she's the Preservation Services Coordinator at Historic Ithaca, which I left off that slide. Sorry. So just we'll get started, and we have a great presentation for you today, so thanks again for having us. Christine?
Yeah, thank you. If we could have the next slide, please. So our subjects today, deconstruction, salvage, and sustainability are very relevant, very urgent, given our global climate crisis. And it's exciting to see that Tompkins County is part of a climate-smart community. I think that's a real positive, and one of the reasons why we've been so energized to have our collaborative group in this community. So Circularity, Reuse, and Zero Waste Development, CROWD, began in 2020, and it's a network to move toward a more sustainable built environment around New York State. Our partner are composed of preservationists, planners, architects, policymakers, salvage and reuse professionals, university labs, lots of great work coming from the students who are involved, and many more interested parties. This is a movement to support building and building material reuse through preservation and deconstruction to realize environmental, social, and economic benefits. We have a website, www.crowd.org, and there's a lot of resources that are on that website, and I encourage you to take a look at it. Next slide, please. So for us at Historic Ithaca, this is a really important topic in historic preservation and cultural resource management. Our priority, of course, is to preserve buildings and promote reuse and adaptive reuse. And if they can't be saved, then advocating for material salvage and deconstruction. Conserving buildings and building materials, of course, saves embodied carbon. And just to show you some illustrations here of the sort of spectrum of preservation that we're involved with examples from our own community. So on the top left, you can see that's the Cascadilla Boathouse. We worked with the city of Ithaca to obtain a grant from New York State to preserve the exterior of the boathouse, and there'll hopefully be a phase 2 for the interior coming soon. We've also been involved in advocating for buildings being moved. Some of you might remember this lovely building on Coddington Road. It's 1840s house that was moved down Coddington Road about 8 years ago. Also in our community, we have examples of overbuilds where the lower portion of an older structure, like the Currie building, is then added to above. We also, on the bottom left, have examples over at Ironworks, which opened recently, of partial saving of facades and elements of the building. And then we move on to our other spectrum, which is salvage, so material salvage, taking out house parts, materials from existing buildings or buildings that are about to be demolished. And then we have deconstruction. Some of you might have been up in College Town a year and a half ago to see this large-scale deconstruction project. So these are all important ways in which we can think about the circular economy and think about reuse and sustainability. Next slide, please. I think it's really helpful to look at this inverted triangle diagram that was created by a recent Cornell graduate, Wyeth Augustine Marcel, from the Just Places Lab run by Professor Minner. So the least preferred methods are at the bottom, so demolition and landfilling, and the most preferred methods are at the top, so building maintenance and preservation. These are all really important things to think about when we think about reuse and we think about deconstruction and sustainability. Next slide, please. So we're working to support a growing movement, and the number of people who come to our regular Zoom meetings is growing all the time. So we're involved with education and community engagement, policy and practice recommendations, green jobs and skills development, and research and resource development. Next slide, please. So last summer, the crowd and Cornell graduate students and professors from the Just Places Lab and the Circular Construction Lab created an exhibition that some of you might have seen on deconstructing demolition that was on display in the atrium in the Tompkins Center for History and Culture. And it was a really interesting way to convey some of the activities and some of the ideas that we're trying to bring forth in our community. So I'll pass things on to Diane Cohen, and she'll take over from here.
Great, thanks, Christine. Good to see you all today. Diane Cohen, CEO of Finger Lakes Reuse. I'm just going to speak very briefly, a couple of slides here. First, starting with the reuse trail and the identity that reuse, deconstruction, building materials, salvage, what Historic Ithaca does, and what Crowd is really assembling, really helps elevate that identity that Tompkins County and Ithaca has in terms of the greenness that we are striving for, the leadership that we have, and we have a real wealth of intellectual capital with our universities here, and it's just been an amazing experience to be part of this Crowd organization because of the deep research they bring, the students that they've been able to bring to the table to help propel our work. As many of you know, I felt like a lone voice for a long time. So the reuse trail was actually a little grassroots thing that we put together organically. We didn't have specific funding for it, but it was a partnership with Historic Ithaca probably close to a decade ago, and Habitat for Humanity, and we pooled I believe it was a full-page ad in the Ithaca Journal back when that was a newspaper that you could take an ad out in, and we divided up the tasks to get this launched. And what was really fantastic was Cooperative Extension got some funding and took over this reuse trail through their Get Your Greenback program. And last I looked, there's 40 or maybe more businesses that are associated with the reuse of materials. And so even though I had been in the work, I had no idea that there was that much already. And I think there's this latent reuse economy that could be absolutely enormous. I think it's a huge opportunity. Next slide, please, Jenny. Thank you. And so we did this, as most of you probably know, Finger Lakes Reuse does have a deconstruction program, but it's really been dormant for the last 5 or so years, mostly because we've been so successful at getting people to bring us their materials. So our greatest challenge has been trying to deal with the volume of material that people are bringing us more and more and more, but we're really delighted with this Crowd collaboration to be able to actively salvage out of, I think it was 14 houses or 12 houses. And we fully deconstructed one, and just demonstrating the current capacity that this community has. Most of those materials still have not yet been sold. They're housed in this warehouse down next to the farmer's market. And we're hoping to have a sale soon, but the space where we were going to have a sale got filled up with pallets of other material. So we're trying to navigate that right now. But there's amazing quality chestnut boards and hardwood flooring, beautiful oak and fir. It's beautiful stuff when we get a chance to get that to market. Next slide, please. And finally, really, I mean, what waste management and sustainable materials management is the collection of materials and then the sorting of it and then getting it to market, right? So we're talking about getting things to recycling markets, and I think what clearly stops the general waste industry is it's very labor intensive. And so what Historic Ithaca and Finger Lakes Reuse have been demonstrating, we have these job training programs. We are able to engage a workforce that's possibly not even measured in our unemployment statistics, people who have just kind of dropped out and aren't being counted as the unemployed. Finger Lakes Reuse does not have any trouble when we post a position having numerous responders. We have a waiting list for our job training program, and I believe the partnerships with Rotary, with BOCES, and the existing groundwork that these organizations have done can continue to build that, what I call a subsidized workforce, volunteers, trainees who are paid for from outside grants, other funding, and also the revenue we generate from the materials we bring to market that they help us with can really help build this. I think there's an enormous opportunity here. It's really exciting to be in this meeting today to hear all of these topics that are being discussed. I think I'm going to come to this committee more often because you guys are really pretty interesting. But that's it for me today, and thanks so much. Turn it over to Jenny.
Great. Thank you so much. My name is Jenny Minner. I'm an associate professor in the Department of City and Regional Planning. And it's really been a pleasure to work with Finger Lakes Reuse, with Historic Ithaca and Significant Elements, Susan Christofferson Center for Community Partners, and so many other crowd partners who are really working to demonstrate how preservation, deconstruction, and reuse can contribute to building a really robust circular economy. So that's an alternative to the way that we operate right now, business as usual, where we extract material, construct the built environment. It lives for a short amount of time in too many cases, and then landfill the materials. What we're working toward is really a more regenerative economy in which materials are continually circulated within their highest and best use. And this graphic illustrates the components that make a robust local circular economy, one in which local jurisdictions such as the county, Ithaca, other local and governments and county governments throughout New York State adopt resolutions and ordinances and programs to really support deconstruction and salvage, as well as preservation, of course. What we can do is really adopt incentives, regulations, builds a robust marketplace with physical and digital infrastructure in place to support the reuse of building material to prevent construction and demolition debris, tending to transportation, storage, and processing. So there's a lot to consider, but what we're trying to do is really tip the balance away from this massive amount of waste that we produce. It's estimated that 600 million tons of construction and demolition debris are produced through buildings and infrastructure, and 80 to 90% really can be reused if deconstructed. So if you look at that by weight, construction and demolition debris seems to really outweigh many of the other sources that the public is much more aware of. We're already thinking about municipal solid waste and e-waste. Construction and demolition debris, though, often lives outside of the public eye. And so we're trying to really build more awareness around alternatives to the environmental injustices that are really associated with demolition. So deconstruction is a careful, systematic, careful process of deconstructing the materials and elements from buildings, ideally for reuse at their highest state, but then also recycling as an alternative to simply dumping construction and demolition debris within the landfill. And the built environment generates about 40% of greenhouse gas emissions globally, more than 50% of material extraction, and is responsible for more than 50% of waste production globally. And what we're talking about within Crowd is really focusing on embodied carbon. So in much of the progress here locally and regionally on conserving operational carbon. We still have quite a ways to go in terms of thinking systematically about policies that can conserve embodied carbon. And given the climate change imperative, really thinking about low carbon, embodied carbon building materials and new construction, thinking about reclaimed materials and preserving the lifespan of buildings as long as possible, really helps us to account for and avoid this whole amount of greenhouse gas emissions that is associated with extraction, manufacture, transport, construction, and then demolition, hauling away, and landfilling, and then the greenhouse gas emissions that are associated with the decomposition of landfill. So as I mentioned before, we've been working, I know the county and other entities have been working very hard to address operational carbon, and that accounts for a great amount of greenhouse gases, but so does embodied carbon. And we need to be thinking about new construction and its externalities, as well as how we can systematically adopt policies of deconstruction and preservation to really retain and conserve embodied carbon. So these are a few of the key terms, and I won't read these. I will instead direct you to a new guide that we have available on the Crowd website. You can look at these. I just want to, again, emphasize, though, the differences between deconstruction and salvage. Deconstruction is really a systematic whole building reclamation of materials for reuse as an alternative to demolition. And I also want to share this graphic, which I think is super helpful. It's often used by Dave Bennick, who is an expert in this area. So a lifetime's worth of waste. So the EPA states that Americans produce an average of 4.5 to 5 pounds of waste a day. This adds up to 135,000 pounds of waste in 75 plus years, or one average lifetime. But just one average American home weighs about 56 pounds per square foot, and this adds up to 135,000 pounds per home. So demolition of one American home is equivalent to a lifetime's worth of waste. So this is really important to put into perspective. We certainly have seen quite a bit of waste within Ithaca and Tompkins County. These are some images showing demolition that was really important to galvanizing our group. And it's this picture that really, to me, says a lot, which is trying to salvage the chestnut wainscoting from the building. And there was such a short amount of time to do that, and so small relative to the amount of the rest of the building. So what we're hoping you can do, what the Tompkins County Legislature can do, is really support deconstruction and building material reuse through a resolution, through adopting an ordinance or program that can support deconstruction and reuse countywide. We have other local governments who are starting to make progress on this. Ithaca has certainly been a part of the crowd conversations, and now Auburn as well. So we're hoping that you can recognize the environmental, economic, and cultural benefits of deconstruction, and consider a pledge for county-owned properties. There are several different resources that we have available. the Susan Christopherson Center and other crowd partners put together this fantastic deconstruction guide for local government. We also, as a group, put together this newest alternatives to demolition guide, so you can take a look at that as well, which is on the crowd website. And within that, you can see case studies across North America of deconstruction ordinances and policies from Palo Alto, which extensively supports deconstruction and requires it, Portland, Oregon, the first, Vancouver, BC, at Pittsburgh, which has an executive order. And there are other examples, San Antonio that recently adopted a deconstruction ordinance, and Hennepin County that has grants to support deconstruction and reuse, and Nashville, Tennessee, that has adopted permit delays and material management plan requirements. So there's much more information in that guide. We're working on this tour. Actually, it's changed a little bit since the slide, but there is a pocket-sized mobile app where you can discover different sites of significance in terms of thinking about building and building material reuse, deconstruction, and salvage within Ithaca. And Crowd also has a series of crowd conversations. If you haven't attended these or watched them, I encourage you to join us for these. We've had guest speakers from Baltimore, from Portland, San Antonio, here in Ithaca, Savannah, lots of great discussions, and we're going to have more starting in the fall. So I just would like to conclude and say thanks for listening. We're happy to answer questions. Thank you to all of those of you who have participated in crowd meetings, and let us know if you have questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee? Greg?
Yeah, thanks. This is really interesting topic. There's a really, I think, a lot of pieces here and a lot of things that we can do, and some questions that probably are outstanding. You talked about economic impact and you talked about incentives. And I'd just be curious if you have any insight into what type of incentives some of these other municipalities that have enacted this are providing, or if they're not, if it's just sort of a directive. And then also in terms of the, obviously the environmental impact is first and foremost and significant, but understanding the economic impact to the property, or what potential costs it does add, and do we have the infrastructure in place if our community were to move to this type of policy or practice? Could we support it? And I guess what would be needed there? So I guess it's multiple questions.
Do you want to field it? You want me to first? Number one, the cost is probably a bit more because the industry hasn't adopted it yet, but we do have some contractors locally that are very interested in it, are doing it. In fact, I think you hired one, LCP, Larry Pierce and his group, and he's actually training right now in Binghamton, in the city of Binghamton. There's a project from Just Places Lab with a young man named Nyaja for a group called Resistance to Change, and they're doing a sort of a visioning project, and then they are also learning about deconstruction from Larry. So there's a great opportunity for young people to be in the workforce with green jobs. There's definitely more coming, but one of the economic impacts that we have, which is really direct, and we're doing it every day, is significant elements and Finger Lakes reuse, and some of the folks on, well, all of them on the reuse trail. Even though we're not for profit and we have that status, we still pay our sales tax to the county, to the city, and to the state. So we file our taxes, and the more that we can do and the more people that we can hire, we can sell more, do more, we've had more space. So Diane, I'm sure you have more to say about that.
Yeah, that's a great overview. I was supposed to say in my segment that in addition to just workforce development, there's enterprise development as part of this. And I think probably other members of Crowd, I'm still kind of focused on my operation, but they've got a lot of the research. When the city of Portland, which was the first one to enact this, there are numerous privately run reuse centers. By putting the ordinance in place, the business came. So and there's lots of case studies out there, and we have a lot of knowledge in this community about, well, these people tried this. So I think getting it to be a county-wide conversation it's an exciting opportunity, because these are materials that are costing us money to dispose, and we can convert them into dollars and jobs and business opportunities, and it's all just there for us to reorganize.
I would also say that from the solid waste management plans from both the EPA, the person who used to work in Portland is now hired by EPA. They were very interested in this subject matter, and they brought it to the table. There was 63 of us at a meeting to talk to the EPA about what to do with, at least on federal buildings, about deconstruction. Second part, the state also, we both spoke about the CLPCA. We have other groups of the state agencies with us in our crowd meetings on state policy and working on the state, and then we did the solid waste management plan a couple weeks ago, and of course we attended the meeting about solid waste management here as well, and we'll be commenting on that. So we have, sometimes when you're talking about the environment or solid waste, it gets grouped together, but we're sort of trying to parse it out and talk about building materials because of those numbers. So.
Randy?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I found the embodied carbon discussion quite interesting. I'd like to learn more about that. One of the issues, I'm actually restoring a 190-year-old house. I've been doing it for 5 years, and it's very labor intensive. Every piece of wood you save it's not really a cost benefit. It's very expensive to strip 13 layers of lead-based paint. So it's a challenge, right? And part of the issue, I also have deconstructed and saved a 1,200 square foot addition on this house that's over 100 years old. And I saved all the wood. And again, it just takes so much time, and you need a place to put it. Otherwise, it deteriorates. So what's the biggest challenge when you deconstruct? I mean, where do you put all this stuff? And then you've got to remove the nails, and you've got to strip it, and space seems like it's such a huge issue when you deconstruct something. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
You need a place for the stuff to flow through. There's a person who used to, and by the way, you need a pneumatic denailer. Since you're on one of our committees, maybe we'll let you borrow it. There's a guy who started in Brattleboro a deconstruction organization, and he ended up coming over to Ithaca and working for us for 2 years as our deconstruction coordinator. And then he has since moved back to Brattleboro, and he started a for-profit company where they deconstruct, and he's a wheeler and dealer. He sells the stuff as soon as he does the walkthrough. He takes a photo record and he starts pre-selling it, and so he is operating without a facility, so it can be done. But then he has a network of facilities throughout Vermont and Massachusetts where he can send stuff. And so when, Anna Kellis is very, very interested in this deconstruction and interested in looking at it, and I'm always saying you need infrastructure to go with it. But watching what happened with Portland, some contractors, they just have a big garage. They have occasional sales. There's a number of different ways that it can happen. I do believe it would be in the best interest for Tompkins County for a very large facility that could be shared for these when there's a large project, and to also handle some other non-building materials, but large volume materials that could be better handled. So the facility space we have right now is not yet sufficient to do full-scale deconstruction, but there is commercial inventory available for materials to flow through in this county.
And not to be philosophical, but what comes first, the chicken or the egg sometimes? And on this project, there's also a great need on the architecture side and the building code side to talk about reusing those materials. So we've been in those conversations nationally about what to do with the building code so that you can reuse those materials in new buildings, in old buildings, and not have to have, you still have the the rules, you have fire ratings, you have all of that stuff, but actually figuring out a way to do that. So we've been in quite a few conversations with architects and different I guess, workshops that we've been doing, working with all different types of industries. And sometimes the industries have to change a little for us to move towards that, I guess, that large-scale thinking. There's also a study right now with our partners from the Christofferson Center to talk about some of the vacant schools that exist throughout New York State, to think that those would be good reusing. I'd say strip malls and malls would also be, because a lot of them have vacancies as well, and they certainly would be a great space to reuse the spaces. So. We just need some funding, that's all. And we have applied. NYSERDA came forward with some bold thinking and what kind of grants we could do, and we did put our thing in for an electronic marketplace, but we were not successful in that grant, so.
And one of the things you recommended was a resolution that the county pledged to consider deconstruction for any county-owned buildings that we would be deconstructing. So is that something the committee would be interested if I talk to them about bringing something forward to this committee? And I would work with the planning department too, to see what impact that would have. I think that's something that I do know for like the Facilities and Infrastructure Committee, when you've had the folks on that, you've had those discussions when you're talking about any buildings that we would have thought about deconstruct or not using anymore.
The county owns buildings, as you know, and we are deconstructing one of the old Baker Dental building, and we have two other buildings over here that it looks like they're going to be. We've looked at the cost of remodeling those, and it's very expensive. And so we haven't talked about deconstructing those, but we do know that it's taken a lot longer to schedule somebody to deconstruct something than if it was just to demolish it. And it's more expensive. So what we're doing is test case, I guess you could say, with the Baker building. I don't know what these other buildings that we have over here in the corner, but maybe if there is an expert that you have, maybe it would make sense for them to take a look at those buildings and give us some thoughts. So.
We can do that. We can definitely do that.
If I'm correct for the Baker building, the best we can do, because the processes aren't really in place for that type of building, and is that going by, and thanks for supplying the definitions, I believe it's salvage, so somebody can correct me, I don't know if I think it's already happened, that someone to walk through and see if there's things to salvage, items, but not to be, we don't have the system in place yet to deconstruct and to be able to reuse. Is that correct?
That's correct. When we were there in the fall in October, and we did go through, and we were planning on doing that with, because it did have to be abated. The building had to be abated, no matter if you were doing demolition or deconstruction. And then Larry Pierce, he actually was calling it, when we spoke to him and his contractors, his workforce, that he was considering it deconstruction himself. And I don't know what the RFP looked like, or the bidding document looked like for that. I don't remember. Whenever it was, what you asked for. I don't remember.
Greg?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. And I think one of the things that would be helpful in some sort of policy, because it seems like it's something that would maybe come from here and then go to GO to potentially be adopted as a policy change to the county's policies, but is defining the terms as the county looks at them, right? Because I think that one piece of this conversation has been there's a lot of misunderstanding around what's deconstruction, what's salvage, what's demolition, what does it mean to us, what does we're trying to use deconstruction when really that's probably salvage and demolish. So I think from that standpoint, absolutely it's clarity. And I think as we look at, was it the green procurement, what was the name of the policy, green procurement policy?
Yeah, it's in the purchasing policy.
Yeah, in the purchasing policy. I think there was a line that you said, environmentally preferred practices or materials, right? I think looking at the balance as it relates to the county is really important, because not every, I don't know if everything can. That's a discussion for us to have for another day. But to try to make sure that there is some metric to balance against, it is our preference to move in this direction unless it's prohibitive for, whatever those reasons may be. So that would be my comment on that, but I would love to entertain that in this committee. And I really think that the job training component of this and the work that these folks are doing around job training, especially getting folks that aren't familiar with building materials or young folks familiar with building materials, you're seeing a loss of appreciation for the older woods, the craftsmanship, those type of things. And if we can create a workforce that's excited about that, we can do more, right? We can build more buildings that incorporate new and old together. But we really need to start with, I think, a lot of job training and education and getting people excited about just working with these materials and realizing that construction trades and salvage trades are good jobs and are important to our economy and can provide a great living and life for many people. So I think that's a really key piece that we need to make sure we keep front and center in the discussion.
Can I just comment on that too? I wanted to also praise Tompkins County for something which I don't know if you've seen the Aloja Areole, who does the program Career Pathways, which is about environmental justice and doing the roots of success. But we are all combined with Tompkins County Workforce Development, Ithaca Area Economic Development. We meet once a month. There's other task forces from that for workforce development in green jobs. So it's coming together really well. We've all been kind of in our little pieces. Finger Lakes Reuse is one of the leads on that particular project, and we're at the point where we're trying to figure out how we can recruit people into these jobs. What do we have to offer? Who has good training sites? We have a good training site. They have a good training site. And you could be, you could do deconstruction, but you could also do air source heat pumps, which Aloja's been doing. BOCES is also in their TST BOCES. There's numerous partners. Anytime you want to come to a meeting, let us know. Yeah, it's a great group. So. We're doing a lot of work.
And I see Jennifer has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. This was super exciting, and I just want to underline the green procurement connection too, thinking about reclaimed materials in any new construction as well, and policies that are supportive of a full spectrum of building reuse to building material reuse is really important. I would love to see my county take a leadership role and really pilot some innovative ways to incorporate preservation and reclaimed material also in new construction. And then again, underlining, looking at incentives that other cities and counties provide to people who are interested in taking the next step to deconstruction. So just closing the gap with grant funding can sometimes help private property owners or other owners do the right thing.
Well, thank you for working on this and bringing what you've been doing so far to us. I want to add that as a retiring home inspector, seeing buildings over the years, that it's amazing that reuse had been done for so many years that, I'd look at a building and going, oh, these are barn beams. This is reused brick in buildings. And that was done for a number of years, and I'm not sure what year was it, building codes or something took over that it was only allowed for new materials, but this was just done out of practice probably for millennia before our modern time, that they just reused materials or moved buildings and things like that. So, and thank you for reframing the wood that I have and the other materials in my garage, from hoarding to recycling and using them in my reuse, but I have built a number of things out of different materials. So any other questions for the group right now? I hope you'll come back as things go along to see what else we can do to help support you in doing this. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and let us know when you need us to work on the resolution with you. We're ready.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be in touch. Thanks. Thank you. And we have a couple of minutes. Is any last time we were running overtime, so I said if anybody, committee members had any reports to wait till today. Does anybody have any reports? Veronica?
Thank you. I just, a brief report, wanted to lift up that I attended the Get Your Greenback Tompkins closing event, party ceremony thing a week ago or so. I know about like a bunch of you were there. They're closing down their program, having done what 12 years of work, really like kickstarting and integrating and collaborating with a lot of organizations and people in the community moving toward sustainability and environmental justice. And the theme of that event was a just transition, as in like how do we transition away from extraction and toward a sustainable future while keeping in mind human equity. And I'm doing a bad job explaining it. But yeah, it was really wonderful. Thanks for everyone who contributed. And I wanted to lift up, a lot of things were said, but just like a few points in from some of the speakers, like lessons learned. I'm missing some. One was the importance of centering equity and not technology as we move forward. So instead of focusing on the important and exciting new like physical technologies of sustainability, centering equity first, and then looking at how technology can support that. Another thing was commented was engaging across communities as we increase engagement in the sustainability sphere. Often it's like deepening participation from kind of the same people or communities over and over again, and how do we spread that out, not by demanding that people like go way out of their way to participate in something new, but how do we like integrate sustainability with where people already are. They brought up just the little phrase, me and we need both individual and collective actions as part of this project. And in a tribute to the late Kirby Edmonds, who was one of the co-founders of Get Your Greenback Tompkins, Laura Branca brought up something that I guess he said a lot, that talking about change and how change is inevitable, whatever direction it's going. And it is a process involving grief, and that's part of it too that we have to honor as we bring everyone through the many, many changes, a fraction of we've talked about in this meeting, toward a better future.
Thank you. One last comment that I have is just looking, I forgot to mention this, but looking at through your presentation for the crowd, from the folks at Crowd, looking at the chart or the little bar graph with the amount of demolished materials that go into the landfill that far outweighs all the other materials. So it's very timely, and I know you've made some comments and suggestions to our recycling materials management department regarding our plan. So anything else before we end today? Thank you, everybody, for coming today, and we're adjourned. Thank you.
Location.